Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to present to you today despite the distance, though of course I wish I could be there with you in person in beautiful Malta. I hope you're all enjoying the conference so far. I teach and perform Middle Eastern dance. Well, in geographical terms, it may be more accurate to say Middle Eastern, North African, and Turkish dance, since there's a great deal of cultural continuity between these regions. Of course, some dancers who focus on Arab styles prefer to call what they do Pan-Arabic dance. Most of us who use these general terms really specialize in one particular Middle Eastern performance dance genre, Oriental dance. Oriental dance is a translation of the Arabic expression Raqs Sharqi, but you may know this style by the name belly dance, sometimes spelled belly dance. There's also the occasional English-speaking dancer who prefers to use the French terms danse du ventre or danse orientale. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the North American and European public also knew this performance art form by names that are now obsolete, like posture dance, muscle dance, and contortion dance. These refer to the fact that many of the dance's movements are articulations of the torso rather than the steps and leg movements that are characteristic of most European dance styles. Nautch dance, a term from South Asia that Westerners associated with suggestive dancing by young women, was sometimes used, showing the tendency of European and North American writers in this period to conflate different styles of non-Western dance. Then you have the terms hoochie coochie and coochie coochie, which also came to refer to burlesque and striptease. In academic circles, this dance style, or complex of styles, is sometimes called solo improvised torso-articulated dance. This phrase was coined by dance scholar Andrea Deegan as a way to isolate some of the key features that distinguish so-called belly dance from other forms of Middle Eastern, North African, and Turkish dance, like line dances or martial dances. There are many ways that conflict can manifest itself in communities of dance practitioners, but perhaps no other dance form has seen as much disagreement over the seemingly simple issue of what to call it as Raqs Sharqi or belly dance. This presentation will give a historical overview based on primary text sources of when several terms for the dance were introduced to the English language. A close examination of the source materials shows how much of our European language technology for Middle Eastern and North African movement has been influenced by fine art, commercial considerations, and popular stereotypes about Eastern societies. The expression Oriental dance was in use in the English language in the 19th century as a general term that could refer to the various dances of both the Near and the Far East. For greater specificity, terminology that referred to place names or ethnicities were sometimes used as well, like Egyptian or Arab dance. During this period, the term Oriental referred broadly to Asia. The American Oriental Society, for example, which was founded in 1842, has always represented academics with an interest in Near Eastern as well as Asian studies. We still see this usage today in terms like Oriental rug, which generally refers to rugs made in the Middle East or North Africa. Over time, the term Oriental came to be more closely associated in North America with people of East Asian heritage and, more specifically, with the racist exclusion of East Asian people from full participation in society. As a result, Oriental dance gradually ceased to be used in reference to dances from the Near and Middle East. But a new term was on the rise that would eventually fill that gap, the French expression danse du ventre, meaning literally dance of the belly. There's a popular theory that this moniker was coined by French colonial forces stationed in North Africa in the middle of the 19th century. The theory goes that the Ouled Nail, an ethnic group whose home historically is the mountains of Algeria, may have inspired the term because some of their traditional dancing includes articulations of the abdomen. The expression would later have been extended to other North African dances, and this would explain why we find a reference to the belly in a dance whose movements actually concentrate mostly in the hips, chest, and shoulders. During my research, however, I was unable to find primary source evidence in support of this hypothesis. The idea that French troops in North Africa invented the term danse du ventre seems to have originated with Malek Chabel in a 1993 paper in the journal Homme et Migration. Chabel, however, offers no evidence for his claim in that article. The first instances of the phrase danse du ventre that I've found in French print sources occur in reference to Orientalist artist Jean-Léon Gérôme's 1863 painting La danse de l'Almé, the dance of the Alma. Almé and Alma derive from an Arabic word meaning learned woman. The Almas were a class of highly educated professional entertainers in Egypt who composed poetry and music, played instruments, sang, and danced. After public female dancing was banned in Cairo in 1834, many professional performers turned to prostitution in the face of economic insecurity. By the mid-19th century, the word Alma was familiar to the French as a term for an Egyptian singer-dancer and sometimes prostitute from the travelogues of Egyptian visitors to Egypt, some of whom explicitly detailed their sexual escapades with local dancers, both male and female. Gérôme's painting depicts a female dancer in motion before an audience of seated soldiers. She is accompanied by musicians playing rebab violin, darbuka drum, and ney flute. The dancer's torso and arms are almost completely nude, clothed only in a short gold vest, open over bare breasts, a gauzy suggestion of a sleeve, and bracelets. She leans her upper body backward, arms extended, pelvis towards the audience. The slumped postures of the soldiers in the painting capitalize on the European belief that physical exhaustion was an indication of immorality. A morally upstanding person conserved the body's limited store of energy by avoiding vice and abstaining from indulgence. The canvas caused a sensation when it was displayed at the Salon of 1864, Paris's annual art exhibition, and it sparked reviews like the following, and here I translate from the French original. The Egyptian police forbid the dances of the Almas in public, yet Monsieur Gérôme's Alma performs with impunity before the immense Parisian public, before our mothers, before our sons and our daughters, this danse du ventre, the last word in lechery. Until now, Monsieur Gérôme has been content to make women blush. To this success he has added another. He makes men blush. In the French press, the name danse du ventre came to be widely used as an alternate title for Gérôme's painting. If this was the first time the expression danse du ventre was introduced to the French language, one wonders whether it was inspired by the actual movements of Middle Eastern solo dance, which few Parisians would have been familiar with at the time, or if it was instead inspired by the scandalous prominence and nakedness of the dancer's abdomen in Gérôme's painting. Consider another French quotation in translation. The head is inverted, the arms are twisted, the hips are dislocated. The goal of all this wriggling is to project to the forefront a nude and bloated belly, which is the center and highlight of the painting. Don't bother exhausting archaeological dictionaries. Don't go ask a scholar what this danse du ventre really was. Examine instead the ardent gaze of the spectators, their outstretched necks, their anxious attitudes. In any case, from the earliest periods of its use, the phrase was inextricably entangled with notions of sexual exhibitionism, hedonism, and moral corruption. When the Exposition Universelle, or Universal Exposition, opened in Paris in May 1889, its living villages, whose residents had been brought to France to recreate the architecture, art, and atmosphere of their homelands, were the subject of enormous public interest. Rue du Caire, or Street in Cairo exhibit, was the exposition's second most popular attraction after the Eiffel Tower. The street was pieced together using architectural elements reclaimed during the demolition of parts of Cairo's Old Quarter. It was positioned near the Machinery Hall, a shrine to European technological innovation, which reinforced the Orientalist contrast between the progressive West and regressive East. What drew throngs of Parisians to the street in Cairo exhibit, though, wasn't its architecture, but the Cairenes who inhabited it, and none were to become more emblematic of the exhibit than the Almas. The image on the right of this slide is from an 1889 French book of cartoons of the exposition. The caption at the bottom reads, Egyptian concert, the real, the only, the unique danse du ventre. By the end of 1889, danse du ventre was in vogue throughout the City of Lights, and hundreds of references to it occur in the French newspapers of the day. In a world increasingly connected by telecommunications technology, railways, and steamships, the Paris Exposition of 1889 made a worldwide splash. Over 1 million foreign visitors attended, and the exposition garnered international media attention. It is at this time that the expression danse du ventre enters European languages other than French as a designation for the dances of the almas in the street in Cairo, languages that included Czech, Danish, Dutch, Spanish, and Swedish. Danse du ventre had already appeared in English language sources at least twice before 1889, but the phrase begins to appear more frequently in British and North American print media in relation to the Paris Exposition. A September 1889 article in the Chicago Tribune reads, "In the Paris Exposition there may be seen a dance which in all probability is much the same as that which Salome danced before Herod. It is the danse du ventre, as it is performed in various concerts of the Rue du Caire by Algerian, Tunisian, and Egyptian women." When Chicago won its bid to host the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, which commemorated the 400th anniversary of Columbus's arrival in the New World, plans for the fair included a midway with cultural exhibitions. There was an American version of the street in Cairo, an Algerian theater, and a Persian palace, all of which featured female dancers. Entertainment entrepreneur Solomon Bloom was just 21 years old when he became manager of this highway of nations, the Midway Pleasance. According to legend, Bloom invented the name belly dance based on the French danse du ventre to drum up business for the Midway's concessions. The word belly was sensational not only because it alluded to what was then a tightly controlled, corseted, and concealed part of a woman's body, but because of the scandalous reputation of the Belly Union, nicknamed the Belly Union, an entertainment hall in San Francisco that offered girly shows to male audiences. In Bloom's own account of the exposition, though, he implies that the name arose organically as a popular interpretation of danse du ventre, and here I quote, "When the public learned that the literal translation was belly dance, they delightedly concluded that it must be salacious and immoral. The crowds poured in. I had a gold mine." Since Bloom is hardly a man who appears to have shied away from taking credit, whether or not it was his due, there is no reason to believe that he would have failed to mention introducing the phrase belly dance to the United States had he indeed done so. In fact, belly dance had entered the English lexicon in reference to solo improvised Middle Eastern dance in the wake of the 1889 Paris Exposition as a literal translation of danse du ventre. The exposition occurs in the November 22, 1889 edition of the Yorkshire Factory Times in an article that gives an overview of the attendance and earnings of the exposition's concessions. Quote, "A cafe in the Rue du Caire attracted 2,000 spectators daily to see the belly dance and realized a total of 400,000 francs. Similarly, an 1891 account of the exposition published in a New Orleans daily paper provides belly dance as a translation of danse du ventre. Quote, "The theaters and the cafe concerts in the grounds make a good thing out of their contracts. The Café Egyptian, which introduced to us the danse du ventre, or indecent belly dance, alone cleared 500,000 francs. Although both danse du ventre and belly dance had entered the English language by the end of the 1880s, danse du ventre was by far the more popular term in the American press, and when the World's Columbian Exposition opened in Chicago, danse du ventre quickly became the term of reference for the unfamiliar dances performed there. For example, the image on the left in this slide appears in an 1893 book of photos of the exposition with the following caption, "A performer of the danse du ventre. We have here a close and trying study of a posture dancer of the theater in the street of Cairo. Described in brief, the woman moved her shoulders and body rhythmically to the sharp beats of the tambour." According to the archival website newspapers.com, Danse du ventre exploded from a mere 15 instances in American newspapers prior to 1893, the year of the Chicago World's Fair, to 568 instances in the 2 years between 1893 and 1895. Use of the term tapered off again once the fervor around the Chicago Exposition had died down. In comparison, there are only 10 instances of the expression belly dance in American papers over the same period. It was typical for English speakers at this time to use foreign languages, particularly French and Latin, to express anything that was at all racy or sexually suggestive. The idea was that the reference could then only be understood by educated gentlemen. This practice was intended both to protect vulnerable women and children from information that was considered too risque and to differentiate the educated upper classes from the lower, who used vulgar English words. Did saying the words in French really hide their meaning? Probably not. By the time the World's Columbian Exposition and its midway were in full swing, the American public appears to have been well aware of the English translation of danse du ventre. Ironically, since French was thought of as a way to disguise sexually explicit information, using a French name might actually have promoted the idea that the dance was erotic or even sexually explicit. A popular history of the United States published in 1964 suggests that the phrase danse du ventre was used because, and I quote, belly dance sounded naughtier in a foreign tongue. The term belly dance didn't come into its own until 1950, when Egyptian dancer Samia Gamal became the breakout star of Egyptian King Farouk's birthday gala in France. Media coverage of Gamal widely referred to her performance as belly dance, despite the fact that she, and later other Egyptian dancers, were quick to offer the Arabic terminology instead. And here are two quotations from American newspapers of the day. Samia Gamal, King Farouk's favorite dancing girl, made a face when she was asked if she did a belly dance. Oriental dance, she corrected. Kismet says that all the girls learn the belly dance in Egypt, although they call it the bellity over there. By the 1960s, when the dance was becoming a fitness craze for North American women, belly dance was outstripping danse du ventre in American newspapers more than 50-1. Note that when Samia Gamal was asked if she did belly dance, she instead called it Oriental dance. She was translating the Arabic term Raqs Sharqi, which by that time was the accepted name for this dance style in Egypt. During the veiled protectorate period of British rule in Egypt from 1882 to 1914, the adjective Sharqi, meaning Eastern, was used to designate things that were natively Egyptian or Middle Eastern, in contrast with things that were Afranki, meaning foreign. Raqs Sharqi was used to refer to any dance of Middle Eastern origin up until the 1930s, when the term became firmly associated in Egypt with what we call belly dance. That was around the same time as actress and dancer Badia Masabni was opening the Cairo nightclubs where modern Egyptian Oriental dance would take shape. Raqs Sharqi doesn't crop up in English popular sources until the second half of the 1970s, when dancers like Anahid Sofian and Morocco in New York, Quila Nassar in Pittsburgh, Isis in Miami, and Sandra Crank in Salina, Kansas, began to use the term instead of the more common belly dance. In a 1976 article in the Pittsburgh Press, Quila Nassar, the dancer on the left, is quoted as saying, "Belly dancing is a term used by the uninformed because the midriff is exposed, but only a few dance movements bring the midriff into play." In newspapers, use of the term Raqs Sharqi reached its peak in the mid-2000s and has tapered off since. Today's English-speaking dance practitioners continue to disagree about what we should call this Middle Eastern movement form. Middle Eastern dance is too generic. Middle Eastern, North African, and Turkish dance is too long. Belly dance has the benefit of being widely recognized, but is problematic because it bears no relation to the Arabic and Turkish names for this dance style. Raqs Sharqi has the benefit of being the accepted Arabic term for the dance, but is thoroughly foreign to the English-speaking general public. Oriental dance is a direct translation of Raqs Sharqi, but sounds to many people like a reference to East Asian dance and also has racist connotations because of the way the word Oriental has been used in North America. What's clear is that no other term to date has come close to eclipsing the popularity of belly dance. So, in summary, The expression danse du ventre, dance of the belly, seems to make its first appearance in French print sources in 1864 in reference to Jean-Léon Gérôme's painting The Dance of the Alma. The French term is popularized in other European languages, including English, in 1889 in media coverage of the Exposition Universelle in Paris. The translation belly dance is introduced to the English language the same year, but is rarely used. After the phrase danse du ventre falls out of fashion, Oriental dance experiences its heyday in the first half of the 20th century. The term belly dance takes off beginning in the 1950s when Egyptian dancer Samia Gamal becomes a household name in North America. Raqs Sharqi is introduced as an alternative to belly dance in the latter part of the 1970s, but belly dance remains by far the most popular term for this dance in English sources. From the beginning, all of these terms have merged a diverse array of cultural dances into one nebulous genre that's often boiled down to sensual hip movements and abdominal quivering. As practitioners of the style continue to renegotiate the names that they use to define this cultural art form, the historical perspective provided in this paper can hopefully help to inform the conversation. Thank you very much for your attention. Hopefully I'll be able to participate in the discussion via Skype or teleconference, but if there are any problems with that, I would be grateful for any feedback and would happily answer questions by email at ainsley.hawthorne@ia.yale.edu. You can also learn more about my research on my website, ainsleyhawthorne.com.